Hi there. Thank you for joining me today to talk about activities for engaging ELLs. These activities that I'm going to share with you are my favorite activities, and they were created for the typical in-person classroom instruction. However, I'm going to offer you some ideas for in-person instruction as well as distant learning instruction. You can visit our website at esboces.org/Long Island RBERN, that's LIRBERN, for more information about our program. And if you are a teacher on Long Island in New York, you can look to our catalog for on my learning plan, which can give you some more exciting opportunities for professional development. If you are on Twitter, I invite you to follow us at LIRBERN and also my personal account, Mrs. D. McAuliffe. You're going to see in my presentation today that I included numerous snapshots of different educators on Twitter sharing their ideas. So it's a great place to find resources. You probably have already come across this video, which is on our YouTube channel. I invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. It's youtube.com/c/LIRBERN. And this session, as well as other sessions that we host, will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We also have different playlists, and one playlist is for parents, and we have resources in 5 different languages: Spanish, Chinese, Urdu, Turkish, and Haitian Creole. If you'd like to join our listserv, our bilingual ESL listserv, you can do so by sending us an email. In a moment, I will share with you a QR code and a bit.ly link to a shared drive, which has all of the resources and protocols for the activities that I'm going to discuss in this session. In addition, there are also some NYSED, so it's the New York State Department of Education Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages, some resources for educators as well as for parents. And those resources are in our shared drive, which I'll share with you right now. So in this session, we're going to talk about different activities that focus on academic language teaching. And one resource is a vocabulary and peer-to-peer interaction activity. Another is a method for structuring academic conversation. And the final activity that I'll share with you is a text discussion activity. You can use the QR code to access the shared drive. It's a shared Google Drive. If you do like any of the activities, make sure you make a copy to your own drive or download it to your computer. You can use that bit.ly link as well to access or bookmark the shared drive. As I mentioned earlier, our session objectives are that you will be able to implement the 3 activities that I'm going to share with you that focus on academic language teaching in the classroom and in the distance learning classroom. So practices that focus on explicit academic teaching include the development of key vocabulary, peer-to-peer interaction, and meaningful activities that allow learners to practice the academic language in authentic contexts. And that's the reason why I chose, or these are the reasons why I chose the 3 activities that I'm going to share with you next. And I also want you to think about this quote: "Reading and writing float on a sea of talk." This is the reason why discussion among students is so important, not only for English language learners, but for all of our learners. Students need that opportunity to practice conversation, practice speaking with one another, and then they can use that experience in their reading and in their writing. This visual comes from the NYSED Hallmark topic briefs, and I want to show you topic brief number 2. I'm sorry, brief number 4, but it's Hallmark number 2 of the Advanced Literacies Instruction. Advanced literacies are the skills and competencies that enable communication in increasingly diverse ways and promote the understanding and use of text for a variety of purposes. And this particular brief, Hallmark 2, focuses on talk and discussion to build both conversational and academic language and knowledge. And it goes on to explain why it's important to give students the opportunity to practice language and some different ideas, but it also shows us the shifts. So our typical classroom talk used to be infrequent. And a quiet classroom was, you know, the most productive classroom, and it's what supervisors wanted to see. But we're moving away from that in that frequent use of formats that promote classroom talk. So think, pair, shares, jigsaws, debates, small group work, and the activities that I'm going to share with you that allow students the opportunity to have conversations and move around the classroom. We're also shifting away from using discussion and talk as strategies for processing new content, and we're using it for processing not only new context, but as a method for demonstrating their thinking and their reasoning. And as students have conversations with one another, they revise their thinking. They take into consideration the perspective of another peer, and they modify their reasoning and justifications, and then they're able to share that not only through conversation, but then later in their writing. We're also finally here shifting away from using discussion and talk as a standalone strategy for learning and using it to support, as I mentioned, reading and writing instruction as well. So the first strategy is the Tea Party protocol. It is called a Tea Party because you'll see in a moment that students are moving around and mingling with one another. Depending on the age and the maturity level of your students, you may want to rename it. It can be something like a social or a speed dating type activity. So depending on your students, you want to make it as motivating, and sometimes just changing the title is something that you might have to do. So this is a pre-reading strategy, and it focuses on developing vocabulary. I'm going to play the video because that is the easiest way to show you how this activity works. And this is a video that I've also used to demonstrate to students how we're going to conduct the activity.
Tea Party. Today you are going to read a text, but the topic of the text is a mystery. You and your classmates are going to try and figure out the topic by using clues. Before today's class, your teacher took parts of the text and copied them onto index cards. Each of you are going to get one of those cards. When you get your card, read the clue and think to yourself, what could the entire text be about? Write a prediction on the back of your card. When you are done with your prediction, put your hand up, look around the room, and find someone else with their hand up. Go to that student. Once paired up, share the information on your cards. With this new information, try and predict what the text could be about. Write down your prediction and then put your hand up. Look around the room for someone else with their hand up. Pair up with that student. Share the information on your cards and use this new clue to help you determine the main idea of the text even before you have read it. Keep moving around the room, sharing cards and making predictions. Continue to gather clues until the teacher has called time. Then, go back to your small group. Look at your predictions and come up with a final prediction. Then, as a class, you will read the entire text and find out if your predictions were correct. Tea Party.
So in the traditional classroom, if you have in-person instruction, the students would be moving around. They'd first have that chance to independently come up with a prediction using either the vocabulary term that's on the index card, the quote, the image, whatever it is that you have put on the student's piece of paper or index card. They have that independent time, and then they are moving around the room and talking more to their peers and coming up with more rich predictions using the clues. So they're building on their thinking using each other's different vocabulary terms or whatever it is that is on their card. Depending on the students in your classroom and their proficiency levels, you may want to give the students a term on their card and then an image to help them make that connection. You might want to use their native language if you're able to translate the term for them, or the phrase or quote, whatever it might be. You might have students work in pairs. So you might have a group of students, depending on their proficiency level, work in pairs and make a prediction together, or as a teacher-led group. So you may take a group of students who are more beginners or in that pre-production language acquisition stage and work with the teacher and come up with a prediction together, and then move as a group or move then independently and mingle with their peers. Here are some screenshots from educators on Twitter showing us how they use the Tea Party protocol. And you can see some of the images that you can use this protocol for students in K through 12, with English language learners, obviously, and with students who have disabilities. I've also used this activity to get teachers and administrators moving during professional development sessions as well. You can see that some of the teachers have given strips of paper, and it might be a quote. You can see here in the top right that students completed a literary tea party on the lottery, and they're collaborating and communicating, and they have strips of paper that the teacher most likely printed out. And then in the other two photos, you see younger students looking at images of fossils, and they're talking to one another to kind of come up with their prediction on what they're going to be talking about. And the next unit was fossils. So that's how the Tea Party would be conducted in an in-person session. Virtually, it would have to be done synchronously. You can, if you're using something like Zoom, you can use the chat feature. So I'll show you my idea here. So I may give students, I may put this up as a display. So all students are looking at the term, and the term is lava. And then I have an image of lava. And then I also have the sentence frame. I think the text is about, and then because. And depending on your student's proficiency level, they may not need that sentence frame. They may need less, so you can just write, I think the text is about. They may need a little bit more from you, or more support from you. So depending on your student's proficiency level, you can make those scaffolds and those adjustments. So then you would ask students to use the chat, either in Google Classroom Meet or on Zoom or another platform, to kind of put their prediction in the chat. You can then also have students go into breakout rooms to further their discussion. You can also use Google Jamboard to collaborate. So this session was previously held live, and I'm going to show you what the educators in that session were able to come up with. Here it is here. So the term was toxic, and we put an image here to kind of show this biohazardous, toxic symbol. And then I put the sentence frame here. So I think the text is about because. And then all these different Post-its that you see are the participants who were in the live session that I hosted. And they put their own, we were all able to collaborate. What I did is I gave them, I shared this document. So I'll just show you here how you do that. Share, and I was able to get the shareable link, and I copied the link here. And then what I did in the chat, because we were using Zoom, is I gave them the link, and it was set up so that anyone with the link was able to access the Jamboard. And then they were able to add their own ideas. So in Jamboard, you don't add a text box, you add a sticky note. So over here on the left, you see the tools, and one is a sticky note. And here is where you can require your students to put their prediction. And so you might have students working on different terms or different quotes at one time. They would go to the link, and then up here you can see they can toggle back and forth between different screens. So here's that first term that we were discussing. Maybe one group of students is working here. And then another group of students can go to screen 2 and put their ideas, and then toggle back and forth so that they can build on their prediction. Another great thing here about the Jamboard is that I was able to add images, Google Images, really quickly. So I clicked that image there of the mountains. I went to a Google image search. I put in toxic, and an image came right up and I was able to just quickly insert it. So that might be something that students want to do as well, is to put in some images to kind of show more of what they're thinking in relation to this term here. If students are logged into their Google account, you will be able to see which student created which post-it and which idea. And students can also can come back and edit. So this here was my my idea, my post-it, and so I can edit it based on the discussions that I have or the post-its and ideas that I'm reading from other students. So it's just, you know, trying to be creative and come up with different ways that I can use this Tea Party protocol, but if we're learning virtually. During the live session, I also had a participant ask if we are holding, if your district is holding in-person sessions, but students are not able to physically work or have those conversations and be close to one another, how can we still do this? And what I would recommend is that you still, even though you're in the same room, you're still really doing distance learning and using some different devices. So I would have students on their iPads or their laptops, whatever it is that your district is using. Some in the higher grades, maybe they're even using their own devices and their cell phones. And you can still do this activity, but you're using more of a distance learning or virtual approach. Some other ideas were to use a Padlet. The only thing with Padlet is that you kind of want it to be a puzzle. And so you don't want all of the terms or all of the quotes to be displayed at once. You want students to have their initial thinking and then to build on it and to revise their thinking. The other option or idea for using the Tea Party protocol virtually would be in breakout rooms. So if you're using something like Zoom, you can assign each breakout room a different term, and they can have that conversation. I used, for example, group 1 might be all of the odd number groups, breakout groups, and I use Google Drawings. And what you can see too is that, you know, I like to keep things fairly simple, but with minimal prep time. So what I did is I took a screenshot of the Jamboard and I pasted it here onto the Google drawing. So it's the same image, it's the same kind of format, it has that little post-it, but this is a Google drawing. And now what students can do is they can collaborate and they can use text and they can put their idea. So I think the text is about, let's see, volcanoes, because, and you can have, you know, students complete that idea. Okay, so just some different ideas on how you could conduct the Tea Party virtually. And also, I do believe when we held this session live that participants were saying that you can use the Jamboard with Microsoft 365 as well. The next activity that I want to show you is a structured conversation strategy. It's the QSSSA. And just a side note here, if you don't follow Valentina ESL on Twitter yet, that's something that I definitely recommend because she is a great resource and she creates these really beautiful infographics. And so here, this infographic is showing you the different parts of the QSSSA strategy. So Q is where you pose an open-ended question, and this can be used for a pre-reading activity. It can be used as an activity while you're reading or while you're in the middle of instruction, or as a post activity here. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. So the Q would be you post an open-ended question. The first S is a signal, so something that you have agreed upon as a class, to signal that I have a response or I have generated some idea related to the question. The S would be, that's your opportunity to provide stems and scaffolds for your English language learners. The third S is to share, so either in pairs or in groups. And then the A is to assess. And I have a quick video here that I'm going to show you, which will give you a little bit more in-depth, although it's short, idea on how to use the QSSSA.
QSSSA is a powerful yet simple technique for ensuring that students are using brick and mortar vocabulary during classroom talk. This is one of my favorite techniques to employ so that students are using academic vocabulary in the classroom. QSSSA stands for Q, question. We begin by providing students an open-ended question that provides an avenue for students to have discussion with their partner or group. Students are given a signal to notify us when they're ready to respond to the question. For example, stand up when you can answer the question, or put your hands together when you have an answer. Thumbs up or close your books. Next, we provide students with a STEM. This STEM has academic vocabulary embedded in it and provides students with the inertia to get their answer out. The third S stands for share. We model explicitly exactly how we would like for students to share. They may share with a partner or share with a group of other students. Sharing in smaller settings helps to lower the affective filter for our English learners and for all students. Finally, the A stands for assess. This is when we will provide students with a way to show us what they know. We can also provide feedback and clear up any misconceptions. All students can write a ticket out, or we can randomly call on a few students. QSSSA is a simple yet powerful way to provide all students a way to use academic language in the classroom. And we know that when students are able to verbalize, they can internalize.
And I also like here, again, this is a screenshot from Twitter that shows how QSSSA was used in a virtual science class and how it promotes 100% participation amongst all students. And I like how they broke up, if you can kind of see here, how they broke up the different parts of this strategy. And they talked about how it's supporting students. So the question, providing the question, and the STEM is the language support for students. Providing the signal and the opportunity to share and assess, that's the inclusivity. And then also the sharing part here as well is that small group discussion. So giving students the opportunity to have that, that experience of sharing and practicing the language with peers. And for themselves, because they're hearing how they're speaking, how they're using the academic language. They're getting feedback by hearing their peers and responding to questions as well. So here's the script, and I also provided a copy of this script in the shared drive. So if you access the shared drive, it is in there. Although Sideless and Perryman have created this, and I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it very quickly as well. So again, just kind of going through the different steps, and this might be something that you want to put in your Google Classroom for students to refer to, email to your students, have them save it wherever they're saving documents related to your class, your course, or you display it while you are conducting the activity either in class or virtually. In person, it would be just as the video had described, where you have that open-ended question. So maybe at the end of an experiment, you would say, based on the experiment, what can you conclude? And the signal may be to put your hands on your head, give students that STEM using that academic language. So based on the experiment, I can conclude that. And depending on your students, they may not use the STEM. They may use another sentence that's appropriate and makes sense. They may use another sentence just for their own individuality and practice. It may not be grammatically correct, but it's something that they're going to refine with your feedback. Next, they would have the opportunity to share by telling the person to your right. It's good to give students kind of that explicit, turn to your right, turn to your left, talk to partner A, B, table 1, whatever it might be. This might be also the opportunity where you are working with a small group of students, depending on their proficiency level. And then you have students share out with the entire class so that you can assess. So maybe students sitting in seat 5 will share aloud, but although every student will write their response in their science journal, something to that effect. Virtually, it would be somewhat of the same format, but what I'm thinking here is that if you're using something like Zoom to have this synchronous conversation, you can utilize the icons like the raise hands. So that signal might be for you to do a thumbs up, a thumbs down, raise your hand, applaud, whatever it might be. Or in the chat to type in, you know, I'm ready, or put a happy face emoji or an emoji, whatever it might be. Then you can also use the chat for students to put their ideas using the STEM. So what surprised me most was, if you were talking about a book or a chapter that you were reading. Students can also go into breakout rooms to have further discussions. So you can, in Zoom, you can decide how many people in a breakout room, how many students. If you want to keep it in pairs, you can put 2 students and they can have that discussion, and then you can again randomize it so students can talk with more students. Later on, if you use the chat, you can assess by downloading the chat, and then you can see what each student had posted. And then you can have students share what was discussed in the breakout rooms. You can also have students post their response to a classroom, Google Classroom thread, or whatever it is that you're using. So it's, you know, a lot of times we have discussions in classrooms and students write it in their own notebooks, and we may see, as the teacher, we may see that notebook, but, you know, at some point that notebook disappears. Whether it's used, or the course is over, or it's lost and left on the bus, or walking to school and it fell in a puddle, whatever it might be. But if, you know, using a platform like Google Classroom or Microsoft 365, whatever it is that you're using, your own, maybe your own blog, you know, students can put their response, and then it's there for you to go back and for you to assess, and also for the student to go back and see as well. And for our ELLs, it's a scaffold because it's always there, and there's more than one response, so they can kind of see how more of their peers are using the language. Here are some images of QSSSA in action, and the one on the large image on the left, and all of, actually, yeah, 2 of them are screenshots from Twitter, but the one on the left here shows how they're using QSSSA in a Nearpod lesson. And so students, you can see that image on the bottom left corner of with the 4 photos. That's where the students were using Nearpod to kind of put in their response and share their responses. And again, it's there for you to assess, but it's also there for students to self-reflect. Maybe they're going to edit it, and for peers to kind of take a look and see how their friends are using the language. The bottom right corner, Carol Salva, so she's with Sidelitz. She actually was a keynote speaker at our Long Island Teachers Institute last November, and she modeled this strategy for us, and we had an academic conversation amongst almost 500, actually more than 500 participants at that institute. So she also was sharing that with us. And then in the top left, top right, you have an example or sample of the QSSSA in classroom, and the teacher here is using it to have a discussion about triangles, I believe, in a math classroom. So, and these videos, like this one teacher here that I have, we're not going to watch it now, but you can access this presentation in the Google Drive, and you can get the link. It's hyperlinked there to that image. But that might be the image or the video that you show to your students or to your colleagues to show them how QSSSA works. The final strategy or activity that I'm going to share with you today is text graffiti, and this is for analyzing a text. It can be used before or after reading or viewing a video or after a discussion, whatever it might be. It activates prior knowledge, helps students make predictions and ask questions and leave their own comments and also reflect. So I may read a comment that a peer has written and make a reflection and revise my own or ask further questions. And it also, if it's used as a pre-reading strategy, it can be used to build that content and background knowledge. So essentially what is done here, and I have the protocol step-by-step in the shared drive. So if you'd like to download it from there, you can. But it gives students, several students, the opportunity to work together to have a discussion about a topic or a text in a shared space. So you can see these images from one is from Twitter and one is from another resource, which I credited here. You can see that the teacher has taken a large piece of paper or chart paper, and they've put the discussion, whether it's questions, a quote, an excerpt from a text, a full text, whatever it might be, an image. They have put that in the center of the space, and then students are all collaborating. Although they're collaborating, they may not be having that collaborative discussion at that moment, but they're having it with one another, but they're having a discussion with themselves based on what's already written on the paper. So these shared spaces, these pieces of paper will circulate around the room, and every student will have a chance to look at what is on the paper, but then also to see the comments of their peers and to kind of share some more information, their own insight. What I've seen in my own experience is that every student is able to participate because a student who maybe doesn't have the language to write what it is that they're speaking in English, they can do so in their native language, and then they can draw pictures. They can also see what their peers have written, and maybe the language that their peers have written has, gives them a greater understanding of what's being discussed on the paper there. And so you can kind of see here, I also like when I was using this in 6th and 7th grade classrooms, I would give each student, or make sure that each student had a separate, a different color marker or pen, whatever it might be. And so then you kind of get this rainbow of responses back. But I also see that every student had the opportunity to address whatever is on, whatever topic is on the paper, because I see the different colors. So this is how text graffiti is done in person. And they can kind of have that conversation and analyze the text. Virtually, again, I would recommend Jamboard because most districts around in my region are using Google Classroom. So Jamboard is another great way to have this discussion. And Nearpod also, if you have a subscription to Nearpod. I'll show you when I hosted this session live, the participants and I had a conversation, and we used the Jamboard. And so in the center, you can see that this was the topic and this was the statement. It said, immigrant families just aren't involved. And that is a misconception that many educators have because sometimes they don't physically see families of our students. However, this, like I said, is false, is a misconception. And so what we've done is we've used the tool, we use the pen tool to draw a little squiggle, a little web from the image. You see, from the text. You can see I'm drawing with the pen. And then we put a sticky note to put our idea on what we're thinking when we read this. And so you can see that I had put here language barrier. So maybe you don't see the families in person because they're not as proficient in English, or they're not comfortable speaking yet. Maybe they weren't aware because they didn't receive a notification in their native language of an event that's at the school. You also see some people writing that they are hardworking and they're very involved, even if they don't speak the language. This was just a surface, quick activity. Some participants were even daring enough to use the pen to kind of write or scribble what they were thinking. So you see false and not true. And the other great thing too is in Jamboard, you can put an image. So, maybe this makes me feel sad. And so I will select that image, and it's really quick. And then I can kind of put it at the end of my scribble. Obviously, you want to model using Jamboard if that's something that you would like to use. This is one of my ideas, but a platform that you have more experience with, or your students have more experience with, maybe something in Seesaw that might be, something you want to use with your students. One thing just to keep in mind, if you are using Jamboard, a lot of times when you put in a sticky note, so false here, it will cover another note. So you see here, it covered that first. This is kind of like the default placement for the sticky note. So you want to model for students that once you put your Post-it, your sticky note, you want to grab it and drag it. And students also can revise it. So if they had, realized they had a typo or whatever it might be, or they want to add on to it and give a reason. Okay, so maybe if my students are just writing false, I want to encourage them to write a full sentence, right? This statement is false because, right? Or, I think that this statement is false because, and the other thing you can do too as the teacher is you can edit those responses. Again, if they're signed in with their Google accounts, you'll be able to see, there'll be an icon showing you which students actually put the responses. It does disappear though. So what I would recommend is if you're using this as an assessment, that you have students get used to writing their names so that you're able to kind of assess and have conversations and give feedback to different students. So, that's one way that you could still have that collaborative conversation using the strategy, the text graffiti, but using something more virtual. And this might even be in the classroom. So, it may become that new normal to use something like Jamboard in the classroom, even when we're conducting in-person sessions. And, also too, you might have classrooms where you have 2 6th grade social studies classes and you don't have enough space to bring all of the students together to have a conversation. But you can have students working together on a Jamboard from 2 different locations. So that's exciting as well. Something you may not have been able to do in the past. So that concludes my session this morning on my favorite, 3 of my favorite activities. And I really enjoy them. So I wanted to give you some ideas on how you can continue to use them. I know that they're beneficial for our students in developing academic language and giving them the opportunity to have those discussions. And I wanted to make sure that if you're not holding in-person sessions, that you also have a way of using them virtually. If you are a teacher on Long Island in New York, you can contact any one of the resource specialists should you have questions about servicing your ELLs, or if you're looking for professional development opportunities and you have questions about bringing some of the services to your classroom or whatever it might be. For Long Island School Districts, our services are free since we are funded by the New York State Department of Education. And the best way to reach us would be through email at this time. And here's my direct email address. As I said, that's also my phone number there, but the best way to contact me would be through email. So it's dmcauliffe with 1 F at esboces.org. And I thank you all for joining me. And as I mentioned much earlier, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, I invite you to do so that you know when we are, you're notified when we're posting new videos, and you're sharing videos with your colleagues, and also share videos during professional development sessions. If you're hosting your own sessions, you might want to use a clip of this video to show them how to use text graffiti in the in-person and virtual classroom, or one of the other resources. So I thank you, and I hope to see you again soon.